I don't know.
Say it with me. I don't know.
Good God, it is liberating. I am a towering mountain of ignorance. I don't know. We're taught to believe that everything has a reason. And so we observe the world, we see what happened, and then we define the thing that happened as the reason the thing happened. But I think a lot of the time we end up mixing up thinking something with knowing something. This is why it can be so impossible to talk about certain topics with certain people. They've tied those suppositions to themselves so tightly with knots of narrative and constructed reality and values that there's just no untying it. And maybe unsurprisingly, in those situations, the best course of action is just to be friends. Maybe even ask them about that thing that they've created, because to them, it's immensely valuable. The world as we perceive it, as we've built it inside of ourselves, is a lie that we tell to ourselves, not out of deception, but out of necessity. We have no other choice. We simply cannot understand the world as it is, and so we construct. But sometimes I just have to tell myself the thing that is definitely true, the truest thing I can say, which is that I don't know.
Never know.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 155 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today we feature two guests, a return visit with author Jeff Bates on his new book, Zombies Are a Problem. And our second guest is the sister of our guest from episode 147, Josey, the eldest of 12 homeschooled kids. Well, this is Hannah, the next born, who preceded Josey in leaving the house and leaving Christianity. She's quite a strong personality, and yet gets very vulnerable in this talk. We don't use Hannah's last name, nor did we use Josey's, but it almost could be the Duggars, except these two broke out. These are two 45-minute interviews, and unfortunately both are without my co-host Bob, because he was out of town on summer vacation. In fact, let me just say that I miss Bob. For you, the listener, he was on the last week's episode and every episode before that, but I haven't seen him for a few weeks, and I'm having withdrawals. I miss him. As I'm working on this intro, my dear friend and coworker at Vanderbilt for the last 6 years took another job, and today was her last day. She was a tender, listening ear and confidant through the most metamorphic years of my life. We became intimate friends, and I was blindsided today by my emotions when she walked out the door for the last time. I was sobbing hard. I'm tearing up even now just thinking about it. Also this week, another dear coworker at Vanderbilt had a massive brain hemorrhage stroke, which caused irreversible brain damage. Her family are around her bed, letting her body expire, even as I tape this. She was only 62. So needless to say, I'm a little melancholy. Then, out of the blue, as I was preparing this introduction, an old neighbor friend from 35 years ago reached out to me through Facebook. She and her then husband lived across the street from us when I was in junior high. She had 2 boys while there, and I remember playing with the eldest, who was probably about 3 at the time. Today he's 41 and a police officer back there in Oklahoma. But I have fond memories of hanging out at their house and have wondered more than once whatever happened to her. I had a crush on her. In fact, she was the subject of many of my early teen whack-off fantasies. Just catching up with her and hearing how she's happy, she's an atheist, and she's remarried for 34 years happily, lifted my heart. So the story of these 3 women in my life, all in their early 60s, represent the human journey. New beginnings, endings, even fatal endings. So here's to consciousness. Which brings me to the subject I want to talk about that's related to both of today's featured guests, being out. as a human being. We talk about being out of the closet as gay or atheist, but I want to talk about being out as a human. My thoughts are stimulated by quotes, and so I'm going to use a few to expand on what I'm thinking here. Rachel Maddow said, quote, "The single best thing about coming out of the closet is that nobody can insult you by telling you what you've already told them," unquote. One of my most exhilarating liberations after leaving belief in God was I could stop apologizing and being ashamed of being human, of being me. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask for this nature, this personality, these likes and dislikes. Truthfully, I find myself a conscious, sentient being navigating the world in which I find myself. And that's true of all of us. Social expectations and even morals, quote unquote, send us all into a turtle shell, hiding, masking our genuine selves. Richard Wright, 20th century author of the memoir Black Boy, said this, quote, "If you possess enough courage to speak out what you are, you will find you are not alone," unquote. Right or wrong, we all seem to need permission to be ourselves. Maybe you didn't get permission from your parents, or maybe you did, but then bumped into the most insecure social environment in America, middle school and high school. If you've been trained by your culture to hide, fake it, put on a mask, hide your true thoughts and feelings. For what it's worth, I hereby invite you to say yes to what it means to be you. Last quote, Jill Bolte Taylor, author of My Stroke of Insight, A Brain Scientist's Personal Journey. She wrote this, "For me, it's really easy to be kind to others when I remember that none of us came into this world with a manual about how to get it all right. We are ultimately a product of our biology and environment. Consequently, I choose to be compassionate with others when I consider how much painful emotional baggage we are biologically programmed to carry around. I recognize that mistakes will be made, but this does not mean that I need to either victimize myself or take your actions and mistakes personally. Your stuff is your stuff, and my stuff is my stuff," unquote. We taped the conversation with Jeff on May 7th, 2017, and the talk with Hannah on June 3rd. We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith. Please subscribe to our podcast or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Our show is available on most podcast platforms. Also, you can support us monetarily in two easy ways. You can pledge $1 or more per episode through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA Podcast. Or you can leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated. Our opening monologue is an excerpt from a YouTube by Hank Green titled Towering Mountain of Ignorance. The music behind it is Never Know by Jack Johnson. The segue music on this episode is performed by the Barry Orchestra, available at barryorchestra.bandcamp.com. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is.
Don't forget you. Oh, it's so sad. I hope you can hear me. 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 I miss you.
My first guest today is Jeffrey Bates. He lives in Cocoa, Florida. He is a self-published author of 3 children's books, a poet, and a storyteller. He was a former guest on episode 94. He's the father of 2 children. He and his wife, Becky, have been married for almost 18 years. He's the stepfather of Becky's 3 children and also a grandfather to 3. He has a bachelor's degree in religion and sociology and an MDiv. He's a former minister in the Christian church, that would be the Disciples of Christ. He left the church in 1996, not really clearly realizing why at the time, but only that he had a crippling feeling of dissonance. The words of faith no longer made sense to him. He left the church and began working in secular jobs, but he never stopped listening to himself and to what all of that church stuff could have been about. It was a long time, up until 2013, that he finally gave himself permission to say he no longer believed. That was a huge year, and he's still riding the waves of the new experiences it has opened up to him. By participating in men's work and through a good bit of therapy, he's been learning to listen to what he has always been saying to himself, instead of what others expect of him or what the hegemony of the Christianity he'd been conditioned by demanded. Today, Jeff makes a big deal out of language. He's become convinced that the problem with contemporary Christianity, as with all forms of westernized religion, confuses metaphorical language, the language of depth and awareness, with literal language, which tends to be argumentative and defensive. He's heavily influenced by the work of Joseph Campbell. In a poetic response to his own inner struggle to articulate what he is seeing, Jeff has written 3 poetic books for children. The first 2, entitled The Little Bucket and The Little Bucket Deep Space Meeting, are meant to inspire curiosity and wonder for the child to discover the inside of his or her own bucket. They are Campbellesque in that they take the child on a heroic journey through loss and discovery. The third book, and the one we're featuring today, is meant for the adolescent and just released on Amazon. It's called Zombies Are a Problem. Metaphorically speaking, Jeff envisions that the whole world is under the influence of an unseen, unappreciated, yet spellbinding and dangerously powerful apocalyptic virus called affluenza. It's what makes us all sick. The virus takes over the brain and controls it, essentially rendering it useless. A zombie is never happy with what they get. The more virus is never satisfied. It gestates defensiveness. It's always ready to blame and accuse others for causing their problems. Jeff writes, quote, "What if we were all just little Michelangelos, little Beethovens, little Einsteins, just trying to express what we see in the world? When art is not present, arguments, defensiveness, and pain prevail. Though this sounds complicated, it actually is very simple and comes down to something that we can experience in our daily lives. A zombie, like an empty bucket with a hole who doesn't know about it, tries to perpetually fill themselves up externally with always being right, never listening, having more, and being more popular, always comparing themselves with others, and with thinking more highly of themselves than they ought. And I would add, too lowly of themselves sometimes, too. So here's my talk with Jeff Bates. So I got Jeff Bates on the line here from episode 94 about a year ago. We did you know what? I listened back to it today. It was a good episode.
Yeah, well, I always appreciated you taking the time to, connect with me on my...
The Little Bucket was the book, and still is the book, but we were promoting it and talking about, how to live from within. And man, it's so weird. When I listened back to it, it was last April 2016. What I didn't know was a shitstorm was about to hit my life in December of 2016.
Yeah.
Had a lot to do. I was kind of amazed at how relevant your book was, and maybe had I been listening better, I might not have got my legs taken out from underneath me. But one of the things that is a big deal to me now, especially as we talk about it constantly, and that's, agency and knowing who you are and living from within your own power and having some autonomy and some independence and some differentiation. And, of course, being able to re-enter back into community and relationships with people, of course, but with yourself intact, with your self-awareness, self-love, self-knowledge, like knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are and and just being a yes-sayer to what it means to be Cass.
Yeah.
And having, when I say independence, having such a self-identification rooted in one's self that I didn't know it, but I had really put a lot of credence and validation in the presence of my wife by my side.
Yeah.
You know, when she went through kind of a midlife empty nest premenopause thing, it was and is really. I mean, she's still a work in progress, like all of us, but
Right.
you know, there were some things that there are people in our lives, especially as ex-Christians or whatever, we might have Christian parents or Christian siblings or friends that we aren't really willing and ready to come out to because of this thing called you can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of coddle people around us, and it turns out that there were some blind spots in me that I feel like, in hindsight, that Mindy had to coddle because she was afraid that I couldn't handle the truth.
Wow. So she'd been feeling this for a while then, huh?
Well, that's the thing, man.
Interesting.
It turns out, I mean, I don't know. This is probably too much information, but it really was for a long time, and maybe festering, and then I don't know. You never know what to trust when it comes to hormones, and now we're at a place where we're really good, and we're engaging each other in entirely different ways,
right.
In that we're not Siamese twins connected at the hip. And you know what? I'm not going to be able to put this in the show. I've gone down a path that I really can't publicize. So I'm going to start over.
So did you want me to like comment on that? Because what you're saying is that you've found almost like a new avenue for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that we're conditioned. I was conditioned, and I willingly chose. I don't know if you remember, but I willingly chose the conditioning when I was 17. And it was unconscious, right? It gave me, as you talk about, and as most people realize, it's a grand narrative to plug into, mm-hmm. which we absolutize, and we make it real. We make it the truth. Mm-hmm. And we hold that as if it was holding us, and it was the truth, like we're saying, right? And so when two people are doing that, I guess in a relationship, it's a way to kind of keep you both blind,
yeah,
to the real substance of your relationship.
Yep.
When you wake up to that, and I think it's like, to me, this is as I'm looking at it from being a writer, trying to share this idea of looking within with children, I have a lot of pushback from the adults who don't want to go there. Mm-hmm. And it's like premature almost. It's a premature, we're not aware of it. You weren't whatever you said for like yourself like a year ago, what you were in this space to hear it. Mm-hmm. I wonder how to push this edge out far enough so that it doesn't really scare people or push people away, but they become interested in it. And I think that's the whole idea of storytelling. That's the whole idea of acting and telling the story, just of my book. Plus there's others. I mean, I've discovered other people are doing the same thing. There's a lot of storytellers out there that are trying to wake this place up mm-hmm. inside of us so that we begin living from the inside out, mm-hmm. instead of base our life on the concepts that we're holding, outside of us. I mean, the God concept or whatever religion concept we have, we hold that as if it was the truth, and we can't feel or we can't experience and we can't wonder, we can't be curious, because those are anathema.
Yeah. Well,
right?
And I think you've exposed a couple of things as far as challenges in communicating truth. You got, like I mentioned earlier, you got somebody who's delusional, and they're very comfortable in their delusion, and they are offended and defensive towards anything that's going to pop that bubble. And so you kind of have to tiptoe around them because they can't handle the truth.
Yes.
The second thing is that they're not necessarily willfully defensive. They just don't have ears to hear it. there's
They
a
don't.
blind spot, and a blind spot by definition is you don't know it, and you don't know that you don't know it.
Yep.
And so I think the vehicle of fiction and storytelling is a much less invasive, in your face. Yeah.
Yes.
And attacking, and nobody likes to hear, not nobody, but unless you're just super curious and you seek out somebody's wisdom, unsolicited wisdom, even if it's facts, is not very fun, because the person doing the talking ends up just sounding like the know-it-all.
Right.
If your soil wasn't fertile to receive such seeds, then you're going to say, who asked you? And so your challenge to communicate truth, to help people, to get people help, is almost like an intervention in some sorts. Whenever an alcoholic brother and everybody in the family kind of tries to figure out how to get him in rehab with or without his permission,
Right.
You're trying to be stealthy and what Jesus called shrewd as a serpent and innocent as a dove, in inserting messages by way of narrative. I used to have a thing that my dad would use to water trees and to nurture or fertilize trees, and it was this long spear that you'd shove down into the roots, and at the top of it had a little cylinder where you'd put the fertilizer, and then you hook a hose up to it. And instead of just, putting fertilizer on the surface, it was able to insert it into the roots and have a better chance of really impacting the tree. And so I think in this metaphor that the vehicle of fiction and storytelling is like the shaft that shoves it down to the roots. And you have a better chance of getting through to somebody's defense mechanisms and into their heart and mind by the method of telling a story.
Yes, and I am like going in 1,000 different directions just listening, because you said so many really. It's kind of from where I've been, how I'm thinking about this stuff. The sneaking up on, it's like when you're living in this kind of narrative, your own experience in your own space, and most people around you are plugged into their belief system, right?
Yeah.
This is where I've come to try to learn to differentiate the difference between beliefs and thinking. Because beliefs are the things that we hold to make us secure, right? You could read all this stuff on Facebook. Whenever anything happens, someone's always saying, "Oh, God will help," and the whole. It's like that's coming out of a desire to be helpful, but really, it's coming out of it's like a pre-existing condition.
Yeah, and it's rooted in wishful thinking, I think. In wishful believing. Yeah.
We hope that this person doesn't suffer. We hope that they get over the cancer. We hope that their situation doesn't deteriorate, and the children will be okay, and the family will stay together. Well, I just lost a buddy of mine within 4 months. I think he got cancer, and had 2 grown-up girls. We were with them actually. But he continued to maintain his faith and would say things weekly on Facebook about his condition, that God had this, and such and such and such, and he died like last week.
Wow.
And when I hear that, what do I do with it? Do we just say faith? Well, he's in a better place. He's gone on to his reward, and that's what everybody wants to believe.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's not true.
Well,
right?
of course not. No. Yeah.
But my suspicion is that kind of belief in people, as it persists throughout the course of their lives, has a way of robbing them of something.
Absolutely. Of maturity, for one thing, because I feel like we're talking about kids and Santa Claus and how we have to kind of dance around the subject that Santa Claus isn't real when there's kids in the room, because we're trying to keep that myth, if you will, alive.
Yes. And I want to be careful there, because the word myth to me might mean something different. So myths are not necessarily untrue stories.
Right.
Myths are those vehicles used throughout history that have allowed people to communicate something of a truth or experience that you cannot communicate directly. Here we go again to the
indirect,
indirect idea of fiction. And if there's anything that I've learned, I think it's that I really got from Joseph Campbell, is that there's a mythological layer. There's a mythological story that's going on below the surface in most people's lives. They might not realize it, but when you start poking around on it, you start talking about different things. Have you ever experienced this? Have you experienced that? Have you ever thought about this and this? They're like, what? You mean you felt that way too? Or you thought that too? It's like, yeah, but they have this other whole gargantuan bag full of stuff that they say they believe. And it doesn't serve the purpose of meeting that, whatever they just got while they were talking to you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, there's a lot that that I don't know that I or the listeners know, because you're implying that you've just introduced to them probably a mythos that overrides or
subjugates.
Well, I guess what I mean is it if I understand you correctly, you're proposing that there's a myth that could be parallel to just about almost anybody's human experience.
Yes.
And then when you share it and they're stunned that how'd you know? Well, it's kind of the human experience. It's universal almost. And yet you're saying because they have all this other religious baggage or other beliefs that are less associated with reality, that they're tripped up on being able to fully embrace the power of the narrative, of the real myth or the real narrative that's around their life. I get, what I'm saying? I mean, we're
you're, and I am saying that. I think the time right now in the period of history that we're living, when there are a whole bunch of conflicting, and people deal with this. One person said there's 3,200 religions, and 3,200 or 3,199 of them are wrong. I mean, or there's only one right one, really?
Yeah.
And it comes from a different place. I think that belief interferes with this other capacity that we really do have, that's dormant, that's laying around inside of us, and it's waiting for something.
So let me interpret that. I think that what you're saying is that there is... Okay, here we find ourselves in life, existential. We're sentient beings. We are here. We're seeing and feeling and touching. We have relationships. We've built a life. We've got a career. We've got friends and family. And this is where we find ourselves. And there are some real narratives going on that can serve as tremendous sources of this human need to find meaning-making, storytelling, pattern-seeking creatures. There's some real stories going on that you could really tap into and probably enrich your life and make you feel powerful and purposeful.
Yeah.
But your ability to hear or even see or acknowledge that there are some real narratives going on has been hijacked by your allegiance to these false narratives that are almost like a security blanket or a pacifier for you that keep you in a state of immaturity. And if you could at least loosen up just a little bit on your allegiance to this dogma, then you might find right under your nose in your own backyard that there's a meaning-making story going on that could really enrich your life.
Yes. all the above. And I think and the meaning, and it goes back to how you suggested earlier. That's the idea of sneaking up on you.
Okay.
The element of mystery. Campbell said, the other thing he said was the only thing that religion, if it doesn't preserve the element of mystery, then it's not worth. Then you got to be careful, because then it all becomes pursuit of an absolute knowing of the truth.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
That will actually then cause wars, cause conflict, make things so that you're the only one with the truth and everyone else doesn't have. I have this friend, you met Joe up at Reason-Con, right?
Sure.
And he's been through so much, but he lives in an environment in his little town where he lives where it's full of JWs.
Okay, Jehovah's Witness, yeah.
Yes, Jehovah's Witness. And he's tried to be friends with these people and try to connect with them.
Yeah.
And he'll say, there's just a barrier.
Well, yeah.
There's a barrier. And I think that happens more subtly in our non-more aware moments with people who may not have any religion at all, but there's still some barrier. There's still some, we're not connected somehow.
Well, okay, this to me goes back to the Little Bucket book, or as far as just teaching a child to love his or herself,
yes,
to understand what it means to be me and be unashamed and unapologetic and start showing up honestly and genuinely and authentically as myself. Here I am. Let's engage. Let's share life. Let's have a conversation.
Yes.
Now, what can't happen, and I think, I don't know, if somebody is deeply insecure, and let's say, like you said, with Joe trying to engage people, well, a deeply insecure person is going to latch onto a religion because it makes them feel special in a false way, in a counterfeit way, all of that. But nonetheless, they're going to borrow that and they're going to hang on to that. And that's going to be the opiate that gets them through life.
Yep.
But you also just said that there might be people that have not adopted a religion, and yet Joe or you and I might still feel a barrier. And I think that barrier is still rooted in their own personal insecurity, because if you're black and they're white, if you're male and they're female, if you're Republican and they're Democrat, if you're a jazz lover and they're a country music lover, they're going to find whatever divisive aspect of the relationship, and they're going to hone in on that because they're still in a drowning state of needing to feel superior, and they're going to find a way to elevate themselves over you, as opposed to being relaxed and comfortable enough in their own skin to just meet with you eye to eye and have a real human conversation.
Exactly. I mean, that's perfect. I mean, it's, if you use the analogy of the bucket again, the one who has the biggest hole, or I tend to think that there are people who have a hole in their bucket, and they don't know it.
Well, of course, yeah. If they did, they'd plug it.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
Plugging the hole is not my goal.
Okay.
I think human awareness of the places where I feel, and this is where I'm insecure, okay? The places where humans feel insecure in the relationship with other people, they may blame that person for the feelings that their hole is causing. So it's sort of an inside-outside problem. It's an awareness issue. And so if I blame someone for making me angry, for instance, then I am asking them to fill my bucket.
Or just at least stop making you angry, I guess.
Yeah, stop making me angry because you don't agree with the same political view that I have.
Yeah, and you're a drain on my life, and I need you to change.
Yes, and just listen to the rhetoric that goes on daily. All these flash, news things, and the frustrating arguments that go on between people because they can't agree with each other. So well, maybe you should listen to each other instead of trying to agree. And quit blaming the other person for that painful, whatever that is, disagreement that you're. And I think, people on a political level is one level, but a personal level, if they don't have that sense inside themselves as a human being, which is why we need more people that are aware of this before they go to Washington, before they step into politics, that my personal issues I can deal with, and that I'm not asking you to make me happy, but let's have a conversation about where we need to go with this, instead of me enforcing you hired me to go to Washington to do this job, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, but I'm going to act like a real jerk. I mean, wait a minute. No, let's back up a little bit. Let's start from square one. Let's create a space where we can actually listen to each other out of the enchantment or the fullness of the kind of conversation we ought to have to make things better. Yeah,
and I know that we all fantasize about a politician or a religious person, or even anybody for that matter, in conversation with somebody saying something along these lines. Hey, that sounds like it's really important to you. Tell me more about why you feel this way.
Exactly.
Just to express some curiosity. Now, the problem with that I find with that, and this is me, I'm going to sound really arrogant, and of course I am, but when you have done a lot of the mental work. You've read, you've researched, you've studied, you've got done under the hood of the psychology of why humans do what they do. That kind of question for me to ask somebody that maybe I'm sitting across the table from and say, that sounds really important to you. Tell me more about why you think that way and why you feel that way. Well, there's a little bit of disingenuity or disingenuousness there on my part because I already know, and so I'm asking mostly at that point so that they will answer. And this is obviously the techniques of therapists is to get them to maybe say out loud why they feel that way, and in the process they might stumble onto or discover some fallacies in their own method of how they got there. I don't know.
Yeah, because of how they hear themselves.
Yeah,
and how they hear what they say. And it is too about creating a space for listening.
Yeah,
creating an openness where I don't have to have the last word. Mm-hmm. And that there's something that happens in the space between you and your wife that creates that opportunity for something new to emerge.
Yeah. Oh, and that's so true.
It's very Eastern. I mean, this is very Eastern, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's almost unfathomable for people that have been born in this country or born in the West. They're raised on all these ideas and they consume them like they're some sort of, smorgasbord, and daily, consuming, and then to ask them to stop. Wow, that's, to me, that's like really big. And slow down and listen. I already know it all.
Yeah.
I mean, I already have it. Why should I listen? Why should I stop?
Yeah, I think it would be nice if, and maybe this is kind of what we're talking about, is almost an imperative prerequisite for the kinds of conversations that we're talking about in order for them to take place. Somebody has to say, okay, this person sitting across from me, if I'm to be honest, I hate everything about them. I disagree with them. I already know what they're going to say and think because I used to say and think it and believe it myself. They're idiots or whatever. You just got this giant wall up to say, I have nothing to gain from this person. And so in order for a real conversation to happen, the two people, if not more, that sit down together have to have some space. They've left the door slightly ajar for them to acknowledge that there is something here for me to learn. And I'm going to enter this conversation with at least some degree of curiosity, because otherwise, why the fuck are you sitting there?
Well, because you have I was listening to your presupposition, what's in this for me, right?
Yeah.
And it may be that you are in a position to not ask that question as a mature.
Well, now you're really reaching now, because we're already asking a lot of humanity to sit down with curiosity, and now you're telling me that you're wanting me and whoever else to sit down and leave our selfishness at the door, our selfish gene, to leave our survival mechanism at the door.
I am. What else? What else is empathy? I mean, what else is the compassion that
Well, I just don't believe in any degree of selflessness. Like, if somebody, there is no person on the planet is capable of zeroing out their selfishness. They're going to.
So you're saying teachers in the classroom ought to be selfish? They ought to have a selfish attitude about what they do with their students, and if they don't get what they want from their students, then there's a problem.
I'm saying that in order for them to say, if I'm going to, the teacher-student relationship is a very different platform than what we've been talking about. I was talking.
It is.
I was talking peer-to-peer.
Okay, peer-to-peer, yes.
But I am asking them if they're going to have curiosity, which I'm asking them to have curiosity. Then yeah, I'm asking them to say, I just think that there's an element of self-interest here, and I think that's a good thing. And I don't think you can rid the human psyche of it.
I think it depends on how you're looking at it, because the element of self-interest might be, let's see what else can emerge here than what I've already predetermined as what will be good for me. What I've already decided.
Okay, that's fine. I get that.
What's going to be good for me? And if I listen long enough, And if I really am listening, and I think this is where art comes in. This is kind of where my idea of the apocalypse comes in, right? I think there's a whole idea that we are consuming of each other, and if what I get from you doesn't meet my needs, then I'm going someplace else. That's what a zombie wants. I'm sorry that, you know.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned zombie, because we got to get into, I mean, we've already subtly been talking about your new book, but I want to get really directly into.
I think it was a segue.
It was a segue, and I'm jumping on it.
Yeah. So your idea that is there anything that we can see from, I've met a lot of people in my life who've been very mature, very interesting, and I didn't feel like they had a need for me to be there for them for something. Mm-hmm. I felt like, and I experienced a number of people, I mean, men in the Mankind Project in particular, mm-hmm. that are mature, wise, and
got it all together.
Well, yeah, but they're in process. You know, they're learning and curious and interested and becoming like everyone else. I mean, they're modeling a kind of human being that the ancient people, think pre-industrial revolution or in pre-enlightenment, had as kind of organic. They were more organically like this. That's why they had so much imagination and all of these stories, and they wrote all this, you know, and we've turned it into a belief system.
Yeah, right? Well, I think what I hear you saying is that in an age where information and knowledge is scarce, then curiosity is going to go up. And now that we know everything and we know more, nobody knows everything, but we know more, our curiosity has gone down.
Yeah, and there's a curiosity about a certain level, I think, feeling connected is, again, I'll refer to Campbell, but the experience of being alive and connected to the landscape, connected to the world, connected to each other in a way that's non-competitive, and it's mutually, there's an adventure going on.
Sure.
Like in my life, I feel like there's an adventure kind of unfolding every day.
Of course.
And I try to live into that. And it's been hard. I mean, it's been really hard to let go of that pre-existing condition that I had.
Of course it's hard. If it was easy, more people would be doing it, which is what kind of scares me about a conversation like this between two people. And I'm not saying we're highly evolved, but we've done some work. And we're kind of expecting the Trump world, the political world, the religious world, all of which is populated by people that are very non-evolved, non-self-aware. And now you're saying in order for us to break through to them, they're going to have to be selfless, they're going to have to be curious, they're going to have to be engaging, they're going to have some degree of...
Cass.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they are. I'm saying the people that see, the people that understand, and the people that get it are going to have to lead that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And by like some sort of, I've had so many children come up to me in a classroom and say, when I've read my book, they say, "How did you know what it felt like to be me?" And I had one kid in the classroom when I first started reading, and I didn't know what was going to happen when I read it to kids. And I went to this summer school setting in 2015, and I sat down with it's 20 kids, 8, 9, 10 years old. One little boy got up and ran around the room, and he was saying, I know, I see what he was doing. He was showing him he was his friend. He was pouring out his water. He was giving himself to his friend." And the teacher just like looked at me like, "What do we do with this?" I said, I'm watching it. And it was amazing.
It was amazing.
And so he got an insight.
Oh, yeah. He had an epiphany. Or at least he said, somebody gets me.
Yeah, and something happened, and I'm like, that's the life. I mean,
sure. Whatever
that charge, you know, your mind or your heart, or they're together, or you suddenly get a vision, or you see, or you understand. It puts energy on your feet.
Of course.
It gives electricity to your whole system. That's the kind of idea that I'm trying to give out.
Well, yeah.
Empowerment.
And I think maybe what's going on in my head is I'm not concerned. I guess I'm just admitting, and maybe sad. I'm sad that I know that there's a large swath of people who have been hijacked by a narrative that makes them think they know it all, that has robbed them of curiosity. And your book, my book, our podcast, our conversation is never going to reach them.
Right. There's a sadness level to that, but I think your podcast and what you've been doing and how it's reaching just different people I see jumping on board. Thanks for adding me on the Facebook page.
Sure.
Thanks for adding me. I think, it's this subtle connection. And then that feeling of, like you say, we try to curb the loneliness. I mean, it really is working. It's just it's like leaven in the loaf, right? Somebody said that.
Some Jesus guy said that.
It's some Jesus guy. It's like the wine, man. It's just becoming. It just takes time, and having the conversation, not being ashamed of it. We're putting everything out here. I feel like I'm putting everything I got right in front of where I am.
Yeah.
And I really do think there's sort of like, I'm going to imagine this with you, but I think there really is a zombie apocalypse happening.
Okay, let's talk about that. Tell me what that means to you. What's a zombie apocalypse?
It's a metaphor.
Okay, so apocalypse by definition is what? End of the world type shit?
Yeah, it's like, we got all this crazy stuff going on, and people are crazy. The world is crazy. The
sky is falling.
The sky is falling, and the powers that be they're really taking advantage of the common person, and people feel like, a sense of desperation, and for the Christian apocalypse, right? That was a thing where, don't worry, Jesus is coming back, right?
Well, for some, don't worry. The others, you better worry your ass off because you're going to get left behind.
Right. And look out, Nero, because the real hero is on his way. But metaphor, as I think when I ended the last show, I had to kind of put the Goethe quote out there. I said, alles vergänglich ist nur ein Gleichnis, which means everything's metaphor. All things are metaphors. I think all of our words, I've really come to think that language and the presentation of language and creating a visual language thing is the most helpful way to bring light. I just think poetry and art and that sort of vehicle is a way to bring light.
I'm sorry to sound, but what other option is there? Words are all we have.
They are all we have. Exactly.
And they are just symbols, yeah.
And how they affect us in our thinking or non-thinking, which I think we have more non-thinking than thinking, but we have more believing in the literalness of the symbols, like the literal words, instead of seeing the empowerment behind them. Even being able, how you and I both speak, how others speak, creates opportunities for being open or for being closed.
Right, for sure.
So I just put the zombie book out to sort of say, let's think about this for a minute. What if there really was a zombie apocalypse? I don't think it's any mistake that we're kind of consumed with being interested in, like, whatever, The Walking Dead and all these different shows that people are really interested in, because I think we're a lot like them.
Yeah.
There's a mirroring going on. We can never get enough. Zombies can never get enough. Human beings who live in a consumerist society can never get enough. There's always the next car, the next boat, or the next cell phone, or the next whatever we want.
Sure.
To try and help us feel better.
So do you imply that there's like a senseless level of just being led around by our appetites, and that we're not really conscientious or volitional or agency?
We're not. We're not critically thinking about what we're doing. That's to me the catch. And I'm putting this out really for middle school, because I think in the middle school years is when it's the craziest hormonal time in your life.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying to be better than someone, or fit in, or trying to figure out who I belong to, or why don't I have any friends? And, you're going along. I mean, kids make choices at this age that if they don't get some help or get some guidance, they make choices that set them up for a whole lifelong of just going down the wrong way.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this book too is going to be aimed at younger people.
Yeah. My first two were about elementary school, and then this one is really, I'm trying to talk about. I can read some of this to you if you want.
Yeah, give us a sample.
Give you a sample. And actually, I don't have to read it because I can quote it. That's part of my gig. Zombies are a problem. It's very plain to see. They see the world as a grocery store. They want to consume you and me. But zombies don't know they're zombies. They haven't the brain to think it. They just go around feasting, and if they can't eat it, they drink it. A zombie's brain is soft and juicy like a big mushmelon inside. Their brain waves have all stopped. Yep, the zombie's brain's been fried. But how'd they get this way? It didn't start off like this. One day everything was fine, and the next day, well, they got a virus. I didn't suspect that they didn't know it was happening because everything seemed normal and neat until one day they had a problem. They couldn't get enough to eat. There didn't seem to be enough of anything they wanted to devour, so they began to greedily consume, and they ate more hour by hour. So that's kind of the beginning.
Yeah. Cool, man.
Yeah.
And when does it? Are you self-published, or what? How do you get?
Yeah. This is self-published.
Where can people get the book?
They'll be able to get it, I hope, by the end of May. It's actually not even released yet.
Okay.
So,
but where?
On Amazon.
Okay.
They'll be able to get it on Amazon, and Barnes and Noble will have it too. But I don't think my first two books haven't sold very well on Barnes and Noble. Most people go to Amazon, right?
Yeah.
And it really is, I hope, a way to help kids think about the pictures. Actually, let me say about my illustrator. I didn't actually illustrate this when I had somebody else do it. And she's a fine arts trained comic book, graphic novel type comic book artist. The artistry is really beautiful.
Cool.
She really did a good job. And some of the pictures are illustrative of, like, there's a scene, there's one scene where a family is sitting at a table in a restaurant, a zombie family, and they're all staring at their phones.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at each other, right? Instead of enjoying. So that's part of the sign of the apocalypse.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Well, we got to meet face to face at ReasonCon last month, and that was a pleasure and a delight. And like I said, back on episode 94, as I listened back to it, I just, I so much has passed, so many episodes have passed, and they're all a blur in my head. So when I go back and listen to them, I'm almost afraid to listen to it because I think, wow, a year ago I probably was really bad, or something. Yeah, well. And I came away going, oh, that's a pretty good show. And I think I know, and that's why I'm glad to do this now, is that episode left me wanting more. And I think every time I've ever engaged you, like even at ReasonCon, I mean, there's something about the chemistry between you and I. We could talk forever and
we could.
On endless topics. There's just some sparks fly in there. And so I'm really grateful to have you back on to feature this new book, and recommend that people get it. I'll put a link to the book in the show notes. By the time this comes out, the book will probably be out.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And thanks, Cass. And I guess we've both been in the field of really trying to help people and in the religious route, right?
Right.
So now it's like, what else is there? I appreciate your show, and you are meeting, like I said, people in a way and helping and taking care of yourself now too. I think that's a real big part of it, right?
Wait, that's a perfect picture of what we're asking of the world, because when the fixers, and if you will, the teachers and the people that consider themselves the powerful and the leaders, if they're not asking about their own blind spots, then that's when you get like a Trump. That's when you get like somebody who's capable of becoming a dictator.
Jim Jones. I mean,
right. Unable to take negative feedback or critical feedback. And unable, you know what? When he didn't go to the correspondence dinner, I mean, these people, they can't, they can't take it when people laugh at them. And that's some scary shit. And I know, I mean, I'm kind of, what I started this conversation with was I was one of those people where somebody's so near and dear to me, as close as my wife, had some sense, at least in her mind, that she couldn't tell me the truth because she knew I couldn't handle it. And, I got no business helping other people when I've got giant blind spots. And so I do think that it is imperative and crucial that all of us never stop, to quote Campbell, our own personal hero's journey, where we're certainly aware that we still have blind spots. Nobody's arrived. We can still evolve. We can still increase and develop our personal individuation and self-awareness. And
it's like it's ongoing. It's the thing that I've kind of realized, that even when I come to the end, it's going to be like. And that's part of it's. I will keep evolving in my understanding and my awareness, and it's a good thing.
It's a really good thing. And actually, you know what? When life sucks and life is banal and boring, you can always go back to, well, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, and so there is a endless source of new information and teaching and learning. I mean, I think sometimes when somebody is an adventurer, or maybe they're wanting to be a pioneer, and they realize, well, there's not an inch of the earth that hasn't already been pioneered and mapped. And so now they feel like, oh, I'm bored with the earth. Well, go inside, man.
Yeah. And the other part, too, is I had a conversation with a woman this morning at the UU meeting, and I said, I think the new myth is that of space and of the universe and of the mysteries that are out there.
Yeah.
And she said, myth? Well, how is that a myth? She said, it's not like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. I was like, well, no, but a myth being that way of talking about a way of connecting the inside to the outside. There's a new adventure that is unfolding, with Lawrence Krauss, right? I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Lawrence Krauss was at our ReasonCon meeting.
Right.
And so the whole idea of making science like the new myth, and I mean that in all the positive, constructive, as a story of following the unfolding of the meaning of the universe, which we can follow now our own unfolding, what's going on inside of us, because Little Bucket, honestly, has the universe in his bucket. Yeah. And he also has a hole. And the reason he suffers and struggles so much is because his hole sucks his life out.
Yeah.
And so to learn how to be in your universe, to learn how to be the fulfilled feeling, you said if you get banal and you get bored and you get listless, that's because you're listening to the wrong part of yourself.
Yeah.
You're listening to all the other draining things. So find your universe and go out in it.
Have you seen this YouTube of, or it's a video of some sort on the web, that it starts out with a girl laying on the grass on her back, and she's looking up into the sky, and the camera goes first person from her eyes, from her view, and it goes up into the sky, and it goes up into the stars and past the sun, and it goes into the cosmos, and it's just showing just light years of space and universe. And then it turns around and comes back, and now the camera is coming towards Earth, the pale blue dot, and as it zeroes in, it's this, they get all the way down to this woman laying on her back on a lawn in Texas, who knows, and then it goes into her eye sockets, and it goes into her brain and the synapses of the brain, and it ends up being like the same images that were used to show the stars and the Milky Way or whatever, the cosmos, is inside the brain. And it was just really cool in that I think what we're both saying is that, there's the pursuit of space, et cetera, but there's if you go within, there's a universe there to explore.
Absolutely.
And actually, I think what you're saying is that there's more payoff for me as an individual if I learn more about myself, if I understand myself better, if I give myself the tools to be happier, then that's going to benefit me more than whether we colonize Mars or not.
Yes. And learning how to take responsibility and be accountable for myself instead of blaming someone else.
There you go.
For feeling whatever feelings I have left over from my childhood that I haven't worked through yet, that this marriage or this relationship is reminding me of. I can't blame that person for them. I have to work within myself. I need to go to therapy. I need to go to group therapy. I may need to be on medication for a while. I may need to, but there is something inside of every human being that we tend to like blame on someone else. We project it on someone else.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm guilty. I did it for years, but it's once you become aware of it and you start pulling it back, then you could find your universe and your whole.
Yeah. And so if you are a zombie and you've already been zombified, is there hope, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But zombies don't know they're zombies until they look at my book.
Yeah. But I think in most of the zombie movies, they don't get to come back to being a human. But in this metaphor, we do.
In this metaphor, yes, absolutely we do. And also knowing how to deal with zombies, knowing how to deal with their forever, their needs and their wants. And there's even some of the ideas are like kids can get pulled into the wrong current of just going along with the crowd. And when you're just going along with the crowd, then you better stop and think.
Yeah, because you're behaving like a zombie, or at least the early stages of zombification.
Yes, sir. It's like a horde consciousness. You got to get away from the horde.
Yeah, herd mentality and group think. Think for oneself. There we go.
Learn to think, be critical, learn to be a critical. And if there's anything that would summarize the zombie book, it would be learn to be a critical thinker.
Okay.
Learn to think for yourself.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man, for talking.
Hey, I appreciate it. Tell Bob hello.
Okay. So that's my talk with Jeffrey Bates. In hindsight, I was kind of a dick at times in that conversation, but we talked about some difficult subjects. I love Jeff and consider him a dear friend. I support the work he's doing and believe the world would be a better place if more people would follow his lead. Up next is Hannah. This family was insular, separate, and secluded from reality. Both Josey and Hannah had to do, and are still doing, some serious work to adapt to reality. This is the problem with burying one's head in the sand, or as some call it, compartmentalization. We aren't able, or that's what we tell ourselves, to deal with harsh realities, and so we create a different narrative in order to cope. But the sooner we say yes to what is, the sooner we authentically engage with reality and adapt accordingly, the sooner we understand ourselves and our agency. Hannah is doing such work with eyes wide open, as you'll soon see. So without further ado, here's my talk with Hannah. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's good.
Good.
We finally get to talk.
I know.
Where are you calling from?
I'm just going to say Seattle because nobody knows where Kingston is.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it's like west of Seattle, about a ferry ride away.
Okay, I think my listeners might know the story here, but I'm going to give them a background. But on episode 147, we had a young man named Josey on the show, and he kept talking about his sister. And at one point in the interview, I said, well, I want to talk to her because she sounds cool. And I reached out to you, and we were able to, you're the sister, Hannah.
Yes, I am. That's me.
So I do a lot of tapings and a lot of shows, and even though it was only maybe less than 10 episodes ago, I might need, I'm going to reflect back on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but was there a family of 12 kids?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
And Josey was the oldest?
Yep.
And where are you in the order?
I'm second oldest, so right underneath Josey, you'll find me.
How many months apart are you from him?
I think we're like 18 months apart.
Yeah. So, again, another background is that you guys were raised kind of on a farm, homeschooled, very secluded from society, a very fundamentalist Christian environment.
Yep.
And even though Josey was the older one, I think he got a lot of courage. He took a lot of courage from you and some of your initiatives to think for yourself. And you were the first to move out. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, talk about that. What was the process of moving out? And I guess maybe at what age did you realize that I'm not necessarily into this thing as much as my parents and my family are?
That was a very interesting and kind of long, drawn-out process for me.
Of course.
I was never really as into Josiah. Josey really, really liked studying the Bible and like figuring out all those deep questions in it. And I just kind of was pretty ambivalent about it. I read the Bible sometimes, but I don't know. I was kind of busier thinking about like the tangible things right in front of me that really bothered me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I guess going back to when did I move out? I was 18 and I had a lot of issues. I had a very tumultuous teenagehood, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of depression, self-harm was involved.
You're a cutter?
Yes, I was. Mm-hmm. I'm doing much better now, but in high school, that was very much a big part of my life.
Well, maybe you can help me understand that, because I've had theories about it, but I know that, well, maybe I don't know, but it seems like that there's so much inner pain that is intangible that at least I can feel this pain and I can feel alive. I don't know. What do you think drives a person? What drives you to cut yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some truth to what you're saying. It was just like I felt all of these super strong emotions bubbling up inside of me, and they didn't have a place to go. I felt like I didn't have anybody to talk to because, you know, if I told people at church, they would just tell me that I needed to pray harder and believe in God. And I wasn't really a Christian if I was depressed. So I turned to cutting, and it was, you know, very visceral, physical way to feel my pain that kind of let me forget about all the inner turmoil for a second.
Well, they may even try to exorcise a demon out of you if they knew.
I don't know if they were really that kind of church, but they definitely probably would have put me under some sort of discipline.
So how old are you now?
I'm 23.
Okay, so gosh, only 5 years out.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with the family?
It's all right. It's kind of rocky, you know. Right now, I think my parents are kind of mellowing out because there's some backstory on this too. Right now I'm living in Seattle because my aunt has cancer. So I moved up here from Portland to help her and her kids kind of go through this process. So I take the kids to school, I make dinner, I keep the house running, laundry, dishes, all that stuff.
Wow.
And help my aunt feel comfortable because she's dying essentially. So
yeah.
So I think my parents are mellowing out right now because they kind of realize that I have bigger stuff going on.
Well, yeah, and that they can appreciate that you're a good person. I know that sometimes within Christendom, there's a fear that outside of God and being owned by God or having given your heart to Jesus and you're filled with the Holy Spirit, you have a propensity to be given over to depravity and to be a bad person or whatever. And now they're witnessing you doing this incredibly selfless work to aid in one of their sisters, right?
So it's my dad's oldest brother's wife.
All right. But still, that's a very self-sacrificial work that you're doing. And I think not only do they realize you've got bigger fish to fry or that you've got more going on, but that you didn't turn out to be a bad person just because you left the faith.
Right. And I think that's huge for them to realize. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's been a real bone of contention in our relationship. And I'm kind of the person in our family that, like, if I want to do something my siblings are afraid to do, I'm like, oh, blame it on me, I'll get in trouble, you know? So
yeah, you have this fearless streak in you. You're courageous, you're bold, you're brave, and these are some of the reasons why when I was interviewing Josey, he kept dropping your name. I'm always moved and impressed to see powerful women, you know, stepping out of especially a patriarchal system like Christianity and doing their own thing. And I know sometimes that can be at first reactionary and maybe a little extreme, but when it settles down, which I'm sensing now, like 5 years later, You're not really acting out of anger and animosity towards that as much as just trying to find your own way.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head. That's actually something that I think about a lot, is when I first started to kind of, sidestep away from Christianity and stuff. I kept getting all the time, oh, you're just acting out because, you want to make your parents mad. You'll come back to the faith. And I found that really patronizing and kind of somewhat offensive. Because this, maybe I would wear jeans with holes in them to make my parents mad, but my deep held core beliefs are hard fought.
Yeah.
And I don't take them lightly, and I'm not doing it to make other people mad.
Right? I totally agree. I get that all the time. That it's like, this was not easy, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody. And in fact, if somehow we lived in a society that wasn't under the grip of Christian hegemony,
right,
we would still be trying to find our way in the world. We'd be still trying to form our beliefs. And the fact that we had to kick against this one in order to get some freedom, that's just because it was there to kick against. But
right, exactly.
It's like it's not something that we're going to return to.
Yeah.
And it's not a bitterness anymore. Maybe after a while, it's just like, well, I'd like to have some of those years back, but it's happened, and it's shaped who I am today, and there's no changing that. There's no good in living in regret or self-shame, and so I'm moving on. But to minimize the work that I've done to study and research and think and read, just to mitigate that to you're just a little rebellious. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Please don't sell me so short.
Yeah, don't put that evil on me.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I just want to... I know that you've been a barista, right? You've worked in coffee shops?
Yes. I worked in 2 different coffee shops, one in Battleground, Washington, and one in Portland as well. Cool.
So, let me think. I mean, do you have anything that you want to share specifically, maybe in response to Josey's interview or what you observed? Or
Honestly, I'm super proud of Josey. Just knowing who he was before he started questioning Christianity to now, it's honestly, it's night and day, Cass. You would not believe it. You would not believe it.
Yeah.
He used to be really serious all the time. He used to kind of like have a little bit of an anger issue. And since kind of letting go of all that baggage and all of that toxicity, he has become such a free person and a free thinker and just living life to the fullest. And I could not be prouder of him, honestly.
Yeah.
We're close, and I am so grateful for that connection that we share, because I know that not all siblings get to have that, you know?
Well, you probably don't have that with your others.
I'm actually pretty close with most of my siblings. It's hard to talk to them because my parents monitor phone calls very closely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but my sister Lydia will call me when they're not home and stuff. It's pretty cute.
I have a daughter named Lydia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like that name.
I love that name.
I imagine all your names are biblical names.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So are my kids.
What are your kids' names?
Lydia, Bethany is a city in the New Testament.
Uh-huh.
Rachel.
Okay.
And John.
Oh, nice.
In fact, John's full name is Eli John Paul. And the reason I did that was Eli is kind of the Aramaic for, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is what Jesus shouted from the cross, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Wow.
And so I called him Eli because the first step in becoming friends with God is to cry out to God.
Uh-huh.
The second step is to become friends with God. And John, the Apostle John, the one in whom Jesus reclined with at the table in the Last Supper, and with whom he trusted his mother at the cross, he asked John to take care of his mother. So John represents the best friend of Jesus when he was on earth. And so first you cry out to God, then you become friends with God. And then Paul represents the apostle that took the message outside of Jerusalem. He took it to Asia. Mm-hmm. So the third step in maturation for a believer is to now go ye therefore and make disciples of all nations, and here am I, send me. And so when I named my son, I named him like the 3 stages of Christian maturation, Eli, John, Paul. And in hindsight, I wish see, my name's Frank Shepherd Midgley III.
Oh, wow.
Cass is a nickname. But in hindsight, I wish I'd named him the 4th, Frank the 4th. But, oh well, he's John. We call him John, and he's a great guy. I mean, he really, honestly, he has the least amount of Christian influence on his life because he was the youngest when I left.
Yeah.
And so he really never felt the strong influence of being a preacher's kid.
Right.
And so he's the most atheistic in our family. And happy to be so. He's very much loves science. He loves truth.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. I'm proud of him.
Yeah, well, you're proud of your brother, and we can be proud of my son but he didn't have as much to overcome. Like Josey, like you said, was a devout Christian.
Yeah.
And to go full circle. And I think there is something about being a devout Christian where you do carry around an angst and an anger and a frustration that the world is so depraved and Jesus doesn't seem like the kingdom of God is advancing on the earth as fast enough. And
right.
So Josey has lost all of that and is free and happy.
Yeah, and I couldn't be more thrilled.
Yeah. That's interesting that your parents monitor the phone. They still kind of see you as a potentially bad influence on the other kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think most of that stems from they're afraid that I'm going to plant ideas in their brain.
Yep. Yeah.
I know that they don't really let them talk to Josey either because they feel very much wounded by the fact that Josey is choosing not to talk to them.
Yeah.
I understand his reasons because I've had, time periods where I have felt the same as him.
Yeah.
After a while, you just can't argue anymore. And it's like, all right, this isn't helping.
Yeah. There was some activity in the family that we really censored out of the show.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Josey still has some scars from that. Maybe another reason why he's not ready to talk. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I definitely could see that as a possibility. I think we all do, honestly.
Yeah.
I think there's sensitivity regarding that subject all the way across the board. I think Josey and myself, like we kind of take a lot of blame on ourselves. Like we should have known better, but I don't know. Well,
you obviously by now have got to a place where you understand human nature.
Right. And I just, I feel so, there are days when I feel so sad for my past self.
Yeah.
And Josey's past self. Because we were so naive and didn't really, all we understood about sexuality and all we understood about it was that it was bad and God didn't like it.
Yeah.
We didn't really understand the broader psychological implications that has on somebody's mind.
Yeah. Well, and you don't have to share this, but like in your young adult years, I'm sure you've had to undergo some personal sexual healing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a long road of me kind of just like digging up everything that I'm actually kind of going through that right now still.
Sure.
So a little backstory on this as well. I actually was married.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, for 2 years. It's kind of, we recently separated. It's all fine. We are still friends. We talk regularly. We kind of just decided that we wanted different things in life, and that's how it is.
Well, being 2 years in and no children, that's the best time to do it.
Yeah.
Well, the sooner you put a fork in it, the more pain you're going to avoid.
Yeah, exactly. And that was actually one of our big bones of contention. He wanted kids really bad.
Yeah.
and I didn't, because I felt like I had spent most of my childhood taking care of children.
Yeah. Being the oldest daughter, you were taking care of babies and changing diapers.
Yeah. And my dad was in the hospital a lot growing up.
Okay.
Because he was a contractor, and had a very dangerous job. So he's broken his back a couple of times.
Wow.
He had open heart surgery when I was 13. So Josey must have been 14 or 15. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there was a lot of time where my mom wasn't there. My dad wasn't there. There was this big upheaval, and I had to keep food on the table and keep the kids homeschooled. And
yeah.
So yeah, that was. Oh, and we had a foster sister that helped me too. Her name was Rebecca. But a lot of that fell on us too, and that's a lot for two teenagers to deal with. So I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, I'm ready to have my adventures and not be encumbered by children. Yeah. I love my siblings to death more than anybody else on this planet, but I'm ready, to experience a different aspect of life, I guess.
Yeah, well, your own.
Yes, yeah.
And if a boyfriend is kind of getting in the way of that, then here you go again, Hannah, being the brave and strong and bold, courageous woman to say nope. I mean, I love the fact that you stick to your guns and you have an internal agency that guides you. You have a compass that guides you, and you're not led around by external forces. And I think that's going to pay off. I know it's hard right now, and it has been up to this point, but I think in the long run, you're going to be able to look back on your life and say, I lived it. I did it my way, like Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. And honestly, Cass, that's all I want.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of, that's everybody's pursuit of happiness and freedom. And it's kind of the human adventure. And if that gets hijacked by controlling forces, then people have a choice whether to, kick against that and say, nope, you're not going to put chains on me.
Right. Right. I feel like that's very much been my my anthem in life. Like, don't fence me in.
Yeah, don't fence me in. What are some of your aspirations? Are you thinking of pursuing any education, or what do you want to do with your life?
That's a good question.
$1 million question. One day at a time, right? And it's summertime right now, so we can take a break from thinking about that.
Yeah, never.
Well, and right now you're taking care of your aunt, and so in some ways everything's on hold until she passes or something, changes.
Right. We're kind of in limbo right now because of that, but it's been nice. It's given me kind of a reprieve from the world to kind of actually slow down and think and process this, new breakup and where I want to go moving forward with my life. And I have thought about so many different things. I'm thinking about eventually, not necessarily in the immediate future, because there's saving that needs to happen, and I just don't know if I'm ready to put all the other stuff that I want to do in my life on hold for this yet.
Right.
But I definitely am interested in either looking at going to nursing school and studying psychology, because the inner workings of people's minds is absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I want to go to school and study that stuff, but in the more immediate future, I'm kind of making plans to save up money and run away to an exotic island somewhere for, I don't know, an undetermined amount of time. I'll decide when I get there.
Yeah. Well, and you have to do it for yourself. You have to go and see. I mean, you might get down there and say, "Oh, this is overrated," and then you got to try something else. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, this is it, and this is poignant to me because my wife has almost spent her entire life serving others.
Yeah.
And most of that was by choice and a great joy and delight to her. Right. So especially the raising of the kids.
Yeah.
But now that we're empty nesters and there's a lot of midlife, identity crisis kind of coming up in her heart and mind saying,
I can imagine.
I've got to go try some things. And so I'm just completely encouraging her to do all and anything that she can do to pursue these adventures and to, I know there's a sense where, and this is not just true of women, but because of our patriarchal society, I think it's even more so true of women, and that is a sense where I've got to prove something to myself.
Yeah.
and I've got to go and try this, and you can tell me that it's overrated, but I'm going to go and find out for myself. Thank you very much.
Yep. I'm from the Show Me State, Missouri. Just kidding.
Well, yeah, but I think there's a lot of times people are tired of being told what to think, what to do.
Yes, absolutely. And Cass, that's one thing I am actually very thankful about the way that I was raised.
Okay.
Is I think it instilled in me a hunger and a curiosity to just gather experiences, you know?
Yeah.
Because I experienced one thing for 18 years, and now I want to feel things. I want to feel it all.
Yeah. It's like you've been going to a smorgasbord where there was one tray of carrots.
Yeah.
And then you break out into the world and you see like Fur's Cafeteria, or there's like 50 different entrees to choose from, or one of these Chinese buffets where they've got rows and rows and rows of choices.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, I know Josiah talked about the fact that we kind of experiment with psychedelics on occasion.
Oh yeah, I was going to go there.
Yeah, and I think that really helped me open my eyes.
Sure.
Because I know that he talked about my my suicide attempt, and that happened when I was about, I guess that was 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago, so I guess I would have been 19 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And the timeline of that I find very fascinating.
Okay.
Because it was in the beginning of July, and I, attempted suicide. I spent a couple days in the ICU, and then I spent a week in a mental hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got out and, was very depressed, didn't know where to go. I was refusing medication, didn't want to go to see a therapist or go to group sessions. I don't know why. I was being silly. I should have.
Well, was it a carryover? Like a lot of times Christians don't trust secular therapists, and they don't trust medicine sometimes.
No, because at that point I was like, I had 1 foot in the church, 1 foot out of it.
Yeah.
I think I was kind of more along the with medication specifically. I was kind of being a little hippie about it and was like, no, medication can't help me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you'd heard things. It can make you a zombie. I mean, it can make you stupefy you in some ways, and you're maybe afraid of that.
Yeah, afraid of that. Afraid that it was going to make me somebody who I'm not.
Right.
But I'm on medication now, and it's fine.
By way of a therapist or just your doctor?
Just my doctor. I have gone to therapist, but it's just too expensive. So.
Yeah. But it hasn't been helpful at all?
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, with this whole situation with my aunt, I kind of just noticed old tendencies creeping back in,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to let it get away from me to the point where I didn't care if I got help or not.
Mm.
So, it's just about recognizing your own mind patterns and, nipping it in the bud before it gets too intense.
Yeah. Well, I personally have never taken any hallucinogenics like mushrooms or acid. But
mm-hmm.
what I hear is that you feel connected to the universe. You feel connected to the tree, to the birds. It's just a very connected thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in contrast to your upbringing, you were raised like Christian separatists, like to where we are not of this world.
Very disconnected.
Disconnected mindset. And so I can see where the hallucinogenics would be therapeutic for you, kind of, like you just said, opening up your mind to a new reality.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, kind of what it did for me, because I took LSD specifically about, I guess, 2 weeks after I got out of the mental hospital. Yeah, right. I find the timing very funny. Yeah, so I did that, and there was a moment where I was sitting on this rock and I was watching my friends. We went camping.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching my friends go off into the trees, and I just started crying because I felt happy and I felt connected and I felt safe.
Mm.
And I couldn't remember the last time I had felt that way. And it kind of sent me on this journey of who the fuck am I?
Right. Right.
And how do I feel that way without being under the influence of, you know, psychedelics or any sort of substance.
Mm-hmm.
And also opened my eyes. It felt like I was seeing everything for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a sense of wonder.
Yeah.
And a sense of wonder that I didn't have before, and I don't know where it was.
Well, yeah, but there is something about these drugs that fire the brain up. Like, a lot of times we're only operating with just little parts of our brain, and the drugs really open up the senses. They open up cognitive.
Right.
Just you're taking it all in.
Right.
It's probably not sustainable. Like, we probably couldn't operate in society high as a kite.
Nope.
But those, and I think a camping trip and a safe time, you know, where you're not going to be driving afterwards or something. I mean, I think that's
Absolutely.
I think it's a great experience. I'm kind of looking forward to doing it myself someday. I just haven't done it.
Yeah. I mean, more power to you, Cass. I support that fully.
Yeah. One of these days.
Yeah.
I mean, I have access to it, and I'm kind of ready to do it, but I felt like I kind of want to wait and do it with my wife, and she's got a little more trepidation around it, and so.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Honestly, I think that's healthy. A little bit of healthy trepidation is good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's illegal for a reason. That's what she always says. And I said, well, for political reasons and capitalism reasons, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I know.
So I don't want the irony to be lost on us that I'm talking about some of your strengths as being self-determined and self-guided, and you're on a mission to find out who the fuck you are, like you said, and what does it mean to be Hannah in the real world.
Yeah.
And yet you find yourself doing an incredibly selfless work right now. So I just kind of want to highlight that irony, is that I think sometimes when people, even when they're trying to give themselves permission to pursue their own life and happiness and dreams, that they can say, oh, this feels selfish, and kind of backpedal from it. But I think it might be worth noting that in your process of pursuing yourself, this came before you. And that's the thing about an adventurer, is that life happens right before you. And so you could not have predicted, whatever, a year ago or wherever, that your aunt was going to be diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so here you find yourself, and somewhere in your personal pursuit, if you will, selfish pursuit, you said, here's an opportunity for me to serve others. And I think, you know, some of what we got, I mean, the truths that come up in Christianity that kind of sustain or survive scrutiny is that it does feel good to serve others.
Yeah.
And it feels good to be a part of something bigger than yourself every now and then.
Absolutely. It does. And yeah, you know, this is honestly one of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, my aunt's cancer is, it started out as ovarian, and there was just stuff growing around one of her ovaries, and then they took that out, and they were like, okay, we'll just do chemo. It should be gone. It's totally fine. And then this tumor came back with a vengeance, and is at the base of her pelvis, and it's growing into her major organs down there. So like her bladder, her urethra, her lower intestine. And basically her life is laying in bed, going to the bathroom, taking a shower, laying in bed, going to the bathroom, taking a shower. And it's very painful.
Yeah. That's hard.
Yeah. I can't, honestly, Cass, I cannot imagine what that feels like.
Yeah.
I cannot fathom it.
Well, and I don't know if you go here, but one of the reasons why a lot of people question the existence of God is the problem of evil, or the problem of pain, or the problem of unfair suffering. You know?
Absolutely. And that comes up. I think about that all the time. I'm like, if there's a God and he is letting this happen to this wonderful, beautiful human, fuck him. I don't want anything to do with him, even if he was real.
Right.
Fuck that bullshit.
Well, and there's all kinds of, well, he's with her in the suffering.
Yeah, no, he's fucking not.
That's just a bridge too far. She is suffering all by herself, except for you and the family there, and it's hard for you guys to watch. I'm sure she's being medicated, but it doesn't impede all the pain, I'm sure.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And some days it's unmanageable, and she's laying there sobbing.
Oh,
and
jeez.
I can't do anything but help her take medicine and hope that it goes away and, rub her back.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch her kids watch her go through this.
How old are they?
The two oldest are 17 and 20, and they're not around very much.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that, but
okay. Yeah.
But then the two youngest are 13 and 15.
Yeah.
And so they're very much here and in it. And
you're taking them to school every day?
My uncle and I switch off depending on if he has work or not.
Yeah.
But I do a lot with them. I take them to go shopping and we hang out. And I'm really glad that I'm able to be here for them, specifically Sasha, the 15-year-old.
Yeah.
We're really close, and that connection is like really special to me, and I'm really glad that I get to,
absolutely
be here for her while her mom's going through this.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure she'll never forget you either.
Yeah. Well, honestly, we need each other. It's so sweet.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. I treasure that connection a lot.
So you're living there with them, which you moved out with your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Have either of you filed for the divorce, or where are you on that process?
I haven't started working on that yet, but I'm going to. It's just right now, I just got done dealing with taxes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you're going to try to do like an uncontested, mediated, cheap and easy way?
As possible.
Yeah.
We're both very laid back. He's actually a really cool guy. We just, like I said, want different things, so I'm not expecting there to be any issues.
Yeah, well, that sounds good, and it sounds like you might, it doesn't really matter, but you might remain friends.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're friends, we talk, we call each other sometimes just to see what's up, and because, we really do still care about each other, and we want the best for each other. And
yeah, just different goals.
It's just different goals, different goals. I never wanted to be married growing up, and he always did. And then I got married, and he got married, and I still was like, but wait, there's more of life that I wanted to experience. And he was like, no, this is what I've always wanted. And so that was a big thing of. So
you kind of went in with a little reluctantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
I think it's kind of a character flaw on my part, is that I do want to live my own life, and I have this drive to listen to my own voice above all others, but then I also love making people happy.
Well, yeah.
I love, and I there is this pleaser part of my personality, and not to mention the fact that I really was in love with Zach.
Sure. Well, you could also say that what we've been saying is that as a free agent wanting to try things, is you gave it a try.
Yeah, that's fair. I did. I gave it a go. I thought, you know what? I'll just try this. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Well, maybe after the divorce you can remain friends with benefits or something.
I would probably totally be down for that, but I don't think he would. He's more conservative than I am.
Yeah, he sounds a little bit traditional.
Yeah, which is okay. He's allowed, but I'm also allowed to not be.
Yeah, I don't see Hannah and traditional working out very well with any combination.
Yeah, no, that's what my friends say too.
Yeah. So, all right, so obviously you've got this history with a traumatic Christian experience and sexual repression, and then you get out and you're pursuing your own thing, and now you're literally rubbing the back of a dying woman. What do you do for fun to give yourself some respite from all this trauma?
I'm kind of a homebody, honestly. I'm a little bit of a hermit.
You have your own room in their house?
I do, yeah. I live in the attic.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually really like it. It's kind of weird and quirky. It's
you need your space.
Yeah, it's my little den.
Are you a reader?
I do. I like to read. I've been having trouble with it recently for whatever reason.
Just staying focused?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably a matter of finding something of interest.
Yeah, I'm reading a book on anarchism right now by Noam Chomsky, actually.
Okay. I love Noam.
Yeah. So I'm getting through that, but it's a slow process because it's heavy stuff.
I was going to say, that's a little bit heavy. You probably need some fiction or something to lighten up.
Yeah, I do. I like to draw.
Oh.
I have silly little drawings that I do. I drew a toaster that said "I love baths" on it.
I love baths. Oh, suicide. I get it. Okay. That's a maniacal toaster.
Yeah. It's all in good fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I like to write. I actually like writing is, I think, my big passion.
Okay, what are you working on?
Well, I work on short stories, and I mostly write like songs and poems.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, send me some of your poetry.
Okay. All right. I will.
I'll read it on the air as a part of the introduction or something.
That would be awesome. Yeah. Most of my stuff, unfortunately, is in storage. I wish that I could get to all of it, but I have some here too. So I'll send you something.
Do you have a blog site or anything?
No. You know what? I'm kind of I'm kind of close-chested with my work.
Okay.
Yeah, but I love writing. I write short stories, like children's stories.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm working on a story about two houses on separate hills that are in love, but they can't get to each other because they don't have legs. It's really sad.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and also there's one about a beanie-adorned field mouse that also wears glasses.
A beanie-adorned field mouse with glasses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh. I don't know.
Well,
I write down what comes to me.
yeah. I think what I love about not only you and your story, but all the stories that I get to privy to listen to on this podcast is, how people are overcoming the obstacles that maybe religion imposed on them and trying to find their way. And it's a life's work. I know you're what'd you say, 23?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I've had guests on the show that was 71,
Yeah.
And everybody's just trying to find their way and make the best of what we call life. And
yeah,
I think that it's encouraging to everybody listening because they might feel like, oh, I'm the only one lost.
Yeah.
But not all who wander are lost.
No. That's so true. That's so true.
I wouldn't be surprised if you have that tattooed on you somewhere.
Not yet.
Do you have tattoos?
I do. I have, I guess, 7 or 6. I can't remember.
You couldn't be a barista without them.
Oh, no.
It's a prerequisite to get hired at Starbucks or something.
Yeah, they ask you on the application. They're like, how many tattoos do you have? Minimum of 3 required.
Yeah, right. So do you have any piercings that are in interesting places? Or
I used to have, maybe this is TMI, but you can edit it out. I used to have my nipples pierced. That was a thing. But now I just have the nose piercing, and I have my lip pierced.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And no other interesting ones, though.
No, those are interesting. I guess anything besides the earlobe is interesting to me. So.
Yeah, there you go. I got those too. My aunt and uncle are, they kind of roll their eyes, but they don't make a fuss about it.
Are they religious? Less and less every day.
Yeah, I think so, honestly.
Yeah. Well, actually, some people double down when they're suffering, so I don't know.
No, I don't think that's the case. My aunt is very much Unitarian, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so she she believes in like Buddhism. She really likes that, but then she also believes in Jesus. Her whole thing is she doesn't really read the Bible or go to church or anything like that, but she always says, all I have to have is a mustard seed's worth of faith, and I have that. So, she believes in Jesus and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I don't argue with her about it.
She's not moving any mountains recently.
Yeah, so...
How old is she?
She is, I think she's 48.
Okay. And they don't give her much time to live, or?
So... She's tried 4 different chemos. Her tumor is platinum resistant. Don't ask me to explain what platinum resistant means. Okay. I just know it's not good.
Yeah.
So she went on this trial drug a couple months ago, and that was kind of like the last hurrah. Like,
try.
we just found out like a week ago that it's not working.
Okay.
So on Tuesday, they're going in to put a colostomy bag in so that she can maybe get some quality of life back to do some stuff. But the doctor said she can't guarantee her even 6 months.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so she's setting up right now. She doesn't know if she's going to use this or not, but the doctor-assisted suicide program.
Yeah. They have that in Oregon?
Yeah, in Washington they do.
Oh, Washington.
Too.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they just have to get 2 doctors to sign off on it saying that she has a 6 months life expectancy or less.
Mm-hmm. And that she's considering that.
Yeah, they're starting to set up the program just kind of as like a back burner thing, not like she's going to use it, but just to have in case, I guess, the pain gets to be too much.
Yeah. Well, good for her.
Yeah, you know, I don't blame her for wanting to go out on her own terms.
Yeah.
At all.
Well, Hannah, thanks for sharing your story. I don't know. Just as a follow-up to Josey's episode, and
yeah.
It's been good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too, Cass. Thank you so much.
I miss you so bad. I don't forget you. Oh, it's so sad. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can